right.
Natasha. All right.
Sarah.
Um, how are you?
I'm really good. I had a crazy weekend, which I know we're going to totally get into in a minute, but I mean, I'm doing great. I'm really proud of our last episode that we did. I got some good
Um,
feedback. Did you?
you did? Yes. Well, I got some amazing feedback. Certainly from, I think the one that comes to mind immediately is a mom who lost custody of her son. There's a GoFundMe up. You and I kind of want to do some more research and reach out and see if there's like a way we can help her, but she's kind of in a similar situation that you were in with basically now an ex-husband. And I don't know all the details, so I don't want to say too much yet, but I think her story really resonated with me because her friend was like, she's in the thick of this, and you wouldn't believe how she lost custody of her son because she didn't deserve it.
No, it's insane and it happens every day. It's so sad. I posted on my Instagram over the weekend. I don't know if you saw it, the video of the two kids being forcibly removed from
Yes.
their father's custody. It was at their aunt's house. The 14-year-old girl started putting up on Instagram like live videos begging for anybody who was around to come to the house and protect them. And because their mother was abusive, and she came out and said, my mom abuses my brother and I. And it's a long story, but there's this woman that runs reunification camps and I guess has a lot of judges' ears and said, well, I mean, she comes out and even says in interviews, even if there is abuse, they need to be reunited with that parent. You can't have that bond broken. And she literally takes the kids out forcibly. This 14-year-old girl's being pulled out by her hands and her feet, screaming and kicking. Like, how traumatic is that alone? And then she's sent off to an undisclosed location, zero contact with her father, which is the parent she's close with, to be deprogrammed and reunited with the abusive mother and put back with the abusive mother.
Yeah, I
Like,
thought it was a
these things
great way.
actually happen. My story isn't just like a one off, and mine wasn't nearly that bad, but it still was quite similar. And it happens every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Is there one message that one struck me? I'm sure you received many others. Anything else that popped up from last week? Because last week we talked about mental health, our mental health lows around postpartum. And then also, you so bravely shared about Kane taking the girls away from you for a second time, which you didn't deserve, and really was at the help of a best friend who betrayed you.
Yeah.
Um, which was, so devastating. And we got to do a friend issue because dealing with friendships as an adult is like another form of marriage. But anyway,
Right.
but did any other messages come to mind for
Um,
you?
I mean, I definitely have a few women, a handful of women that I go back and forth with. I try to send like quick audio messages that are just exactly where I was 5 years ago, that they are dealing with this controlling, narcissistic, highly manipulative ex that is using the children as pawns. I mean, and they just don't know what to do. And I remember that hopeless feeling of nobody will listen to me, like I have no other avenues, but there are avenues. There's always more you can do. A lot of it is just hanging in there and focusing on that. This is temporary. You will get through it. There is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just impossible to see it right now, but having that faith that it will get better. So I'm going back and forth with them. I welcome any other women to, send me a DM on Instagram at Miss Pink Monster, and just like one person at a time, I'm doing whatever I can.
One person at a time. We're going to talk about toxic resentments today.
Got a
This
few,
topic, yeah.
got a couple.
What is Um, okay, so toxic resentments. We've started each episode with just a quick high and low. So I mean, I've been following your Instagram, so I already know your low. But what were your highs and lows for the week?
I mean, on my low, and I apologize if I like ruined dinner for anybody who was not expecting that to pop up in their stories, but our basement. So we went out of town to Florida, which is going to be my high in a second. And apparently, while we were gone, a water main, there were like roots that grew into the pipe, and the sewage line burst. And it all came downhill to my neighbor's house and to my house. Literally exploded. Poop, like raw sewage, exploded out of the shower. The drain flew across. filled the entire basement, the girls' bathroom into like my guest bedroom. The bath mat floated down the hallway, like horrible, out of my laundry room. The drain on the floor
Oh,
exploded out like into my work area, but
oh,
heinous, heinous. I don't know if you can see behind me. You see all this junk? That's
yes, sort of. Yeah.
Sam's. That's all Sam and Sophie's belongings because they've moved upstairs. Like we're all, it's not a big house, so we're all just like sharing space up here while the basement. I mean, it has to be completely demolished, like the flooring and the baseboards, everything. Oh,
I know. I saw those videos. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I'm just like the smell, the cleanup. I'm like, oh,
no, I
no,
was
I
telling my
get
mom, I
you.
was like, can you imagine if you were in the shower when that happened? Like the drain explodes with other people's poop and you're I'm like, ah. She was like,
No,
that's a horror movie right there.
Revenge of the Drain. But what was your
So,
high?
I mean, my high was definitely why we were gone over the weekend. We went down to Orlando. That's where my sister Maggie lives. And it was her engagement party. She's getting married to this amazing guy named Eddie. He's lead singer of an awesome band called the 502s. If you ever want some happy music, go look it up. And just the nicest guy ever. So just having some time to reconnect with my family is just the best medicine for me. It recharges me. It like makes my soul happy. My family's insane. Like we're obnoxious when we're all together, but
That's the
I love
best
it. It's
part.
my family, right?
Well, it's so funny you say that because my mom is actually coming to California tomorrow, which is my high. So I'm like excited and anxious just for her to get here. She hasn't been to California probably in 55 years. Like she came in her 20s. And her first time here, she's going to be spending time with KJ. So that is my high. I cannot wait to be drinking a margarita with her tomorrow night.
How long has
Um,
it been since you've seen her?
August. So I went back for 3
Okay.
weeks. Like I'm very much like you are. Like my mom is my best friend. I'm addicted to her. So she'll be here for a week and then I go back for 2 weeks, starting like December 11th with KJ. So I'm there, just so I can get lots of mom time.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that. And then my low, which I'm sure this has happened to you, but I'm out here in LA, I'm pitching stories, I'm having meetings, and I'm waiting on a big meeting for them to schedule the date for it. And you send the dates back and then you wait. And I'm having such a hard time just like letting go of, they'll get back to me, like, it's on their time, like just putting in all this work for this project. And then you sort of have to leave it in someone else's hands is very hard to like take your mind off it or not immediately be blowing up their email all the time. And so it's been this week, I've just had to kind of keep checking myself like, all right, you just got to let it go. Keep working on other projects. It's going to happen. They've said they're interested. So I've had a hard time just getting that off my mind.
Yeah, it's so hard when you are in control of something and you're all gung ho and you put everything into it, and then it's like all of a sudden not in your control. There's nothing you can do but wait. That's that whole let go, let God. Easier
Yes.
said than done, but yeah, focus
Yeah.
on what you can control. But that's exciting. I have, as my daughter Sam would say, I have good juju's, a good juju feeling about this one for you.
So do I. I'm just like, but hurry up, hurry up. So anyway, yes, let go, up, let go, let God for sure today is what I'm dealing with. All right. So we're gonna talk toxic resentments. I love this. I want all of your tips and advice, Natasha. I don't know if you got over toxic resentments quickly, but I've held on to toxic resentments for years and it just like eats away at you. So tell me, what's your definition of a toxic resentment?
So a toxic resentment, for my definition, the word toxic isn't necessarily about the other person and what they did to you, which probably is toxic what they did and why you have so much resentment, but more the toxicity is what it does to you holding on to that resentment, that anger. It dulls your light. It gets control of you and just like keeps that anger and that darkness in you until you can let go of it. And that's the hardest part because whatever happened was probably so egregious that you're still holding on to it, to actually let go of that, like be able to come to a point, if not of forgiveness, of peace about it. And it's hard, man.
It is so hard. And I'm so curious what you did because let's get into what our toxic resentments are over, our lives so far. Cause mine, of course, is around the Kane show and working for iHeartRadio and, leaving there. And literally, I mean, I think it took me 4 years after I left in 2013 to get to a place of like wishing Kane well, not having an emotional reaction to things that happened to me at the radio station or other people there. Because much like you, when you and Kane separated, the day I walked out the door at the Kane show, my friends that I thought had been my friends for 6 years, and that included everybody from the sales department. I mean, I think I heard from 2 people. Like I was just excommunicated. So it was very hard, to think positive for a long time and to not be so triggered, when someone said, "Oh, did you hear the Kane show is doing this?" Or even asking me about my time there. So I'm curious, what's a toxic resentment for you?
I mean, so much so is tied into that. I would say, I mean, I have a handful. Um, I guess I'll speak to I was thinking about this when I was in the shower getting ready. I have a handful that I haven't let go of yet, that they like the anger just like still my blood boils when I think about it. And those would be definitely my best friend that betrayed me.
Yeah.
You know, she's never apologized or owned responsibility that she made a mistake. What she did was wrong. She was wrong in everything that she thought she knew and said. Um, so I can't I have a hard time letting go of when it's like another mother. It's like you have kids too. How can you do this to me and my kids? So I don't know if I'm ever really gonna get over that one, but I've gotta get past the point of like she lives in the area, and if I see a car that I think is her car, I'm just like, oh, like grip the steering wheel, like, is that her? So
Yeah.
I got to work on that one. I still have resentments towards the best interest attorney that was involved in my case.
Yeah.
I was looking through like the text messages that she sent where she's laughing with Peter and his attorney about taking my children away, and it all comes up again. I think with that one, I'm going to be able to let go when I get justice. The thing with resentments is sometimes there's nothing you can do. Like with my best friend, we're never going to be friends again. There's not going to be any healing that way. So the only healing is going to come by letting go. With this attorney, I can file complaints with the bar. I can try and make sure she never works with a child again. And yeah, that's a little bit of revenge, but it's more so justice because she should be stopped. And I think that's going to make me feel better. But
Yeah.
sometimes there's nothing you can do. I'd say the ones that I've gotten over are actually towards Peter. And it even before his passing. And I wrote about this on my Instagram, but one practice that really helped me, and I'm dead serious, you should do this, and it genuinely helps, is wishing that person well. We've talked about
Oh,
this before, asking whether it's through prayer or just, in your heart, whatever it is you want for yourself, asking for it for them. So I would literally sit there and go, okay, God, I pray that he finds love. I pray that he finds peace. I pray that he finds joy in his life. Did he deserve all those things? No, but that's not the point. It's about just kind of training your brain to picture some positivity and healing around that person. And you're not doing it for them. Let's be totally clear with these resentments that we're trying to get rid of. It is not because that person deserves it. You're doing it for yourself, and it's okay to be selfish in that way. Because, like I said at the beginning, you're only hurting yourself by holding on to that toxicity.
oh my God, totally. When I went to Robin Mize, my therapist, and working at Hot 99.5 led me to her. She would say the same thing to me, to pray for him, to pray for people there that I was resentful toward. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I can remember it took me a long time, and I actually started to do it. Then I hated doing that so much. I stopped for a long time. Like, I mean, when I say long time, like a year and a half, like I was like, I can't. But the one thing Robin taught me too was like she kind of put it in a category. She was like, okay, because it consumes you, right? When you have a resentment to somebody, it takes up a lot of your brain space to do other things, to be creative, to be in the moment with your children, to so Robin would say to me, all right, give yourself 15 minutes every day if you want to write down how angry you are, if you want to talk to somebody and say how angry you are. But then after that, it's done. Like, that's your 15 minutes to vent, to yes, this happened to you. Same thing you went through at the time. Nobody believed me. Sammy and I were nuts. And the other thing too was I was so like I burnt out and emotionally drained from 99.5 for a year. I really didn't do anything. So I was used to getting attention all the time from being on the show. People would be like, "Oh my God, I love you," this or that. And
Mhm.
then like all one day, all that ends, which is
Yeah.
also, I think, the great lesson of fame, because like, even though we had fame just on a local level, but it's so fickle, and every celebrity has that. They peak. And then 10 years later, you're like, you see them in Las Vegas and you're like, oh, so-and-so, and they're not that famous anymore. Right.
Yeah.
So I would, for probably a good year and a half, like 2 years, I was still so angry. Like I would go to therapy with Robin. And if I woke up one morning and something happened, somebody wrote me something, I would just, for 15 minutes, I'd write it in my journal, or I just, maybe Robin and I would have a session and we would vent, and then we would move on. And that was good, because putting a time limit on it was great, because for a long time, it just would consume me all day, on and off all day. And then I couldn't be productive in any other aspect of my life.
I love that so much. I said it before and I'll say it again. Robin, you should write a book because I think after
Robin's
these podcasts, all of us want Robin to be our therapist. But
oh,
I mean, I love that. And I hadn't thought about that, but it's almost like what we do with our kids. Like, I mean, at least I do that with my girls when they get in the car and they're really upset because so and so said whatever, some girl gossip drama or whatever. And instead of just like shutting them down, it's like, okay, I don't say this to them, but let's bitch about it. Let me hear it all. And then it's done. Then you close the book and you move on. So I never thought about applying that to my own resentments, but it gives your feelings validity without
that's
letting
exactly
it
it.
consume you.
Yes. And the other thing too, and you do this, you probably have done this working the program, but my brother, who's been sober for 11 years now in AA, he taught me this too. He was like, write down the resentment that they've done to you. And then what's the flip side of that? Like, okay, so I can remember doing this with Kane, and it was like, maybe, Kane never wanted us to do other projects. He never wanted us to do like be on other TV shows. And if we did, we always paid for it in some way, right? Like he would try to make your life difficult. So
Yeah.
then my brother would have me write the opposite. Well, why would Kane might be doing that? Maybe he's worried and insecure about the future of the show. By the way, you are making a lot of money, so this is your first commitment to it. Maybe Kane is having some sort of anxiety issue. Maybe something happened to him. So that was really good for me too, to go through with like all of management there. And I've done that in other aspects of my life too. And that was really helpful to kind of try to see it from their side, even if you don't agree. Or like, I think to me, what also changed is the more the years went along, it became more obvious how sick Peter was. So then it was like, oh, there's so much like more empathy there.
Yeah.
Um,
Anytime it's so hard when we're facing these men that are just acting awful, especially the ones that we've spoken about, these narcissistic, controlling men that'll use children and just do all these egregious things to try and find empathy for them. But there is always a reason somebody's acting the way they do. Most
yeah.
of the time, it's insecurity or pain that they've experienced. But I love what you just said because empathy only makes you better. It only gives you a more compassionate and loving heart. And if it frees you from resentment too, I mean, I really try to focus on that with how I'm raising the girls is that empathy is always something we can use more of. Now, and don't get empathy confused with making yourself vulnerable to get hurt again. You could still have
Right.
empathy for someone and keep boundaries. But yeah, I love that your brother said that because it's really true.
Yeah, it helped me a lot to begin to see, and like I said, too, now 10 years later, almost 10 years later since I've left the show, and owning my own podcast business, and then being out here and producing things and pitching things, I look at like all the lessons that 99.5 and Kane taught me, because there, there's some aspects of that that are so true. When you're in any business, at the end of the day, it is a business. Yes, you don't need to treat people like we were treated, but there are some things that, like, employees are hard to manage. Like, I mean, there's some things that are true.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's not easy. But you said something I really liked, and we touched on this in a previous episode, but I was hoping you could elaborate. Talk to me more about boundaries, because what Robin taught me, one of the best boundaries I had was, see, I could be away from Kane. I could be, I left. I could tell people in my life, I don't want any more, people would text me updates. Oh my God, did you hear this about him or whatever? I could say, hey, look, I know you're sending this out of love. I don't want to hear any more about him. So I was able to actually remove myself from the person and management and all these other people that were toxic, right? How did you create boundaries? And you touched on this, but how do you still create boundaries today with people that might be toxic in your life? Like, tell me more about that. I still don't feel like I have great boundaries all the time.
It's so hard to do, especially when you're dealing with like another parent, the person you're co-parenting with, because you have to be in each other's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, the best way that towards the end, I was actually practicing good boundaries with him. And I mentioned this before, but it's worth mentioning again. I had to force myself to limit the time I would read his messages because he would text me, all day, send emails all the time, CCing attorneys. And every time I would see one of those pop up in my inbox, especially if it was from the lawyers, like I would panic. I'd be consumed with fear of, oh my God, are they taking away my kids again? I mean, I had good reason to panic, but 99% of the time it was just BS, because he was puppeteering the attorneys too. So I really had to force myself to go, okay, only, in the evenings am I going to go through these emails, and I'm just going to respond, and give myself like 15 minutes to go through them, and then I'm going to shut it. And as far as like text messages from him, I would always worry, if I don't answer this, what if it's about the girls? It was never an emergency about the girls, but you can open it, look really quick. And one thing to kind of help you, once you see it's not an emergency about your kids, one thing that kind of helped me was, and they taught this in the program, was you don't need to immediately respond. Like, close the text. Unless it's urgent, just close it and put it away. Because if you respond quickly, especially in anger back at them, it's just giving them power to suck you back in. So by not responding, you're actually putting up a boundary. Like, you don't get to me right now. I will respond to this later, but I'm not engaging in this back and forth with you, which is exactly what he wants, is your attention. So it's like dealing with a toddler, but that was another boundary. And sometimes boundaries are extreme. One resentment that I've been working on my whole life, is my resentment towards my dad. I didn't even meet him until I think I was like 2 or 3 years old. And then he was in and out of my life. And he tied in the church and Christianity a lot with why he would act the way he would. It'd be like, I'm going to help you with an apartment in college, or I'm going to pay for your, tuition to go out of state. And then it would be, well, I prayed about it and God told me no. It's just like, just always controlling, disappointing things with him. And this continued even into my adulthood. I remember I asked him, I was desperate to retain an attorney at the very beginning with Peter, in the separation, and he doesn't agree with divorce. So he wouldn't help me out. And I was so bitter about that for so long. And there was always something in our relationship that was always just bringing me in and letting me down. So I finally decided, really last year, there was like a final straw that I don't even need to get into, but I was like, that's it. You don't get to be in my life anymore. And that sucks, but I'm not doing it out of anger. I'm not doing it out of hate. It's just, I need to draw a final boundary that you don't bring anything good to myself or my kids' lives. And that's really hard to do with a family member, but sometimes it
Yeah.
gets to that point that you just have to say, this is hurting me more than helping me. And I don't see it ever changing. So
What
that's,
has his reaction been to that? As he, because I always think,
he's
my
praying for
friends,
me.
But isn't it interesting when you finally draw boundaries with people, like you completely emotionally let go, they either step up or they step out. Like they really do. And I've found that more in work situations, like I've work situations I've forced, I've really wanted to happen. And the person was just totally, eventually you can tell, just fucking with you. What in any capacity, could be a sales deal, could be a radio station, anything, but it's almost like when you let go, and I'm trying to practice that currently with the thing, like they either respond, like they either step up or they're gone. What was
And
your dad?
that's a really good indicator of if you made the right decision or not, because this is my parent. A parent never gives up on their child. And the fact that he was okay with it, wasn't remorseful. It was one of those, I'm sorry you feel that way, but not, I'm sorry for what I did to hurt you. Let's talk about it. I want to understand. Just really validated my decision that you're never going to act like a father to me. So if you're okay with not being in my life, then I made the right decision. Otherwise it's just always going to be, I spent 40 years being just waiting to have that father figure by him and being disappointed by him. So I chose to not get disappointed anymore.
So many people listening to this can relate to that, because that's the
Mhm.
hardest thing. Our parents, you feel like, should be there for you through thick and thin, show up, should be the mature ones. Then, of
Mm.
course, you become an adult. You realize lots of times they're just a child too, functioning as a 55-year-old, So, wow, that's so deep. I know so many people have tough relationships with their parents, and that's a hard one to let go.
It is hard, and I don't necessarily recommend cutting out a family member like that unless you absolutely get to that point. But we were never really close. I have an amazing stepfather that's been in my life since I was 13, and I have a great family, great extended family, and it was so freeing to finally go, this is everything I need. I have everything I need right here with my extended family and with my children, that I don't wanna be disappointed, and I'm just gonna let go. And that was so freeing.
So freeing. I was going to ask you this because I wondered for you, when you have issues, right, with your parents, okay, we go back to Robin, right? She always told me, what you resist persists, which is kind of part of venting too, letting out, saying how you're feeling, letting it out to somebody or through a journal or however it is. And then, you know, kind of examining those feelings and then finding ways to move forward, right?
Right.
But how have you found, or have you found, because I noticed this, my dad passed away when I was in high school, well, almost in high school, from cancer. And then, you're losing a parent or having a difficult relationship or no relationship with your parents. Then when you go out in the world, right? Lots of times you attract what's missing, right? Or very similar to your parents, right? So for me, it showed up in my life until I got into therapy with Robin. I would date older men. Like I was always looking for a father figure.
Mhm.
And you remember Ed, old man
Yeah,
Ed
old
from
man
Rio,
Ed, yep.
who I dated for 5 years, who was such a nice guy, but he was 14 years older than I was. He was divorced. He had kids that were like, 8 and 6 at the it just
Yeah.
was not, I mean, I was 27. It was really not a good long-term match. But I had to really recognize in therapy, like Robin would be like, "What okay, who is the guy that you want?" And at first I basically described my dad, like, and she's like, okay, that's someone you're mourning. Like, who do you really want? And I was like, eventually I came to, I want somebody my own age. I want somebody that's like educated, has goals, ideally hadn't been married. I didn't want somebody with kids because I had gone through that with Ed and I loved him and we had a great relationship, even with his ex-wife, but we were always doing things with his kids. No, it wasn't an issue. And certainly now being 40, like if God forbid anything happened to Dan, I would expect that I would be with somebody with kids. But at being 27, I was like, I don't want this responsibility. So I started to list all the things that I wanted. And sure enough, a couple times I would attract a guy who was 10 years older, divorced with kids. And I would have to stop myself after the first date and go, Sarah, is this the guy that you want? And then eventually it led me to the other one. I'm curious for you. Do you feel like that relationship with your dad has impacted your romantic relationships?
I mean, I feel like I just in listening to you had like a light bulb, like therapy moment of, oh my God, that's what I've been doing my whole life. But it's true. Like I did what you did. I dated a lot of older guys. And then even with my choices with Peter and with Harry's dad, I was always looking for somebody to kind of save me, for somebody to protect me. And to take up for me, like those things that a father does for a child, I absolutely was looking for, and then was disappointed by that this person didn't fulfill that for me. And it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy of exactly what my dad didn't provide. A husband shouldn't have to fill that void. But I wasn't necessarily dating somebody like my father, but I was looking for that same validation and connection that a father would provide from my spouse. Um, and definitely this, if there's ever a next time around, I love something you said in the very first podcast was that once you're healed, you attract healed people. I feel like this time I'm healing, I'm realizing all these things about myself and fixing them and moving past them. And fingers crossed, this time around, I feel like I'm already whole again. Again, for the first time in my
Yes.
life, I'm whole, that I won't have to look for that in somebody else. And if they're whole also, maybe there's a shot the third time will be a charm.
You will, because that's the one of the things that I come back to about Dan all the time is he, I mean, of course, we're still in couples therapy. We have been for years. It helps us stay on track. It's so great. Um, but I could see in Dan just, he had his own friends. He had, his own relationship with his family. That was a good one. I could just see like there were so many things about him that like he added to my life. There wasn't me trying to fix him. He wasn't trying to fix me. It truly was like two people. And I feel like that's what a healthy marriage is all about is like when you can come to the table and you guys enhance each other's lives and enhance each other together instead of somebody trying to always fix the other person or one person always needs the other person, like you were saying, to be saved. That's when I think a relationship really thrives.
Dude, I think you nailed it. We sound
Yeah.
so healthy now.
Well, look, I say all the time, I don't know how Dan didn't leave me. I don't know how Schman didn't leave me. I mean, because it
Oh,
was like
please.
6 years until we got married. No, and I was really, it took me a long time. And actually, Dan gave me the ultimatum. I mean, Dan said to me, I can't keep going back and forth with you. Like, because I was like, I don't know. Do I want to be married? Do I want to have kids? I don't want to, like, I have this career plan. You have to do this. And he just finally, I think we were at this point of, I don't know. I was feeling really restless, like we needed to get married or not, because we'd been together 5 years. We had some sort of fight. I don't even remember it, but he basically said, I can't keep doing this. So you have to make up your mind. I know what I want. I want to be married. This was Dan. I want to be married. I want to have children. I want to have a family. So you have to decide, but I cannot do another 6 months of this. And I was just like, in my heart, I kept saying, you're going to regret it if you walk away because he's been such a great partner to you. You're going to regret this. So I can't say like, so I mean, I nervously said yes. It wasn't like, let's do this. It was like, get your shit together. I have to do this or I'm going to regret it. Best decision ever. Best decision.
I love that. I love that. I love that he had that boundary that he finally drew at the end, but that, I look at you guys and my heart gets warm when I watch the little videos you post. Like you did one of you guys watching like reality TV on the couch. And I'm just like, I can just see how much he loves her. Just like that comfortable smittenness. Like you guys are adorable. I think it's
Well,
definitely gonna work.
it took us a long time, believe it or not, to get there. And it was not an easy, really, from my point of view, because I think, sometimes it's scary to let go and trust somebody else. And to me, and you've done this too, but I think sometimes society in our heads we get like if we have kids or if we are married, like you can't have a career, you can't have all these things. And I'm a firm believer now that you can have everything. Maybe it's just not all at once, but a good marriage and great kids, I mean, enhance you. They really help you.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I never thought of that before, that you can have it all, but maybe just not all at once, because I do think as women, we put way too much pressure on ourselves to look amazing when we walk out the door, be awesome mothers for our kids, have careers that are fulfilling us and making us happy, and, and looking amazing while doing it. And it's just impossible. I know that that fed into my addiction a lot, that I was just always striving for that and was actually in a massive amount of pain. And so was masking it over by self-medicating, but I never thought of it before that maybe it's just not yet. I've been a stay-at-home mom now for 14 years, and just now all three kids are in school, and I always wanted some sort of career, and now I'm doing it, and I'm doing something I love, doing this with you, advocacy on my Instagram, working on my art. Um that's really interesting. Like, that door just wasn't open yet. Hmm.
And I mean, I just love where we're at, for so many reasons, so many women before us, but we are at a stage where and I see it actually in Hollywood, which is funny.
Mhm.
Because in LA, in LA, you think, oh my God, once you're 40, your career is dead. But I see every day in every aspect of entertainment, stand-up comedy, production, on camera, people of all ages and backgrounds are working in this town. And I'm just like, that's one of the biggest myths of Hollywood, is that people are not working over 40, or women over 40. And it's happening all the time. All the time. Yes. And you can start a career at 40. You can start a whole new occupation. My mother-in-law is one of my inspirations. She went to law school when she was 40, and she's been a criminal defense attorney for 30 years. I
That's
mean,
awesome.
she had 3 babies, she had 3 boys. So yes, you can do it. Just maybe it's different timing.
That is so cool. So she went to law school like after having babies and everything, like at 40?
At 40, she had 3 boys. Schman is her youngest. And so her 2 oldest boys were in school, and Dan, I don't think quite was, maybe, but she had made the decision. She and a neighbor, the neighbor had a son, and they're still good friends to this day. So they were going to kind of, I think, co-nanny, like hire a nanny to take care of the 2 of them.
Mhm.
And she did it. And she went back to law school every single day. And, for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and took the bar. And she is a long time. She's still a practicing criminal defense attorney in Detroit. She is one of my idols. She's amazing.
Dude, that
Amazing.
story like made my day.
And,
Because I've been thinking
and
about what's the next part going to be, and I'm so passionate about everything with the family law system and how messed up it is. And I've been wondering, like, should I go back to law school, or is it, some other type of certification or degree to really, pursue some sort of advocacy more? And then there's always that little voice of doubt in my head of like, you've never really been able to complete everything, in the past, or are you really capable of that? Or it's too late, you're too old. What, are you going to go to college with a bunch of college kids? But hearing that, I feel inspired, like that it's
you should.
realistically possible.
You should. And what I love about her too is, like, completely stay-at-home mom, right? She'd gone to college, then she was a stay-at-home mom, a wife. And like, her biggest earning dollars came like in her 50s. She'd been practicing, she had high profile cases. And I'm like, girl, we don't talk about women at 50 who are killing it, making a ton of money, making and I admire her so much. Like, she, took care of her son, her husband, her boys. Her husband was always the breadwinner. And then, in her 50s, it was her turn. And so I admire her so much. She's amazing and smart, and she's so pragmatic about, like, I don't know, she never emotionally reacts. She's very cool, under pressure, and something I'm
Just
not.
like both of us. I mean, you sounds like you're describing both of us to a T.
Oh God, I'm emotional wreck. I mean, tears, coming back to positivity, more tears, yelling at your fan. I mean, she's like she is so cool under fire. I admire her so much. So yeah, I mean, do it. This is your time. And again, that's the thing I hate about society. I think we're so programmed to think it's over at 40. And
Mhm.
it's like, wait a minute. So many men and women are just starting. Like, they start this whole new career at 40, and for 30 years they kill it.
Man, absolutely. And I mean, especially speaking from coming from divorce, and you've been building this marriage and this life that you thought was going this one way. And all of a sudden, that picture of that life is over. And it's very hard to get to a point then of not only just imagining a completely new life that maybe you were always intended to have, but understanding that you deserve that. So I love that for all my middle life divorce ladies out there, that maybe this is the gift of your divorce, that you can start over now. And
Oh
what
my
a
God.
kick-ass
Hell yeah.
example for your kids you'd be. I love that.
Amazing, right? Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
I heard a quote the other day. Oh gosh, I hope I don't screw it up. It was, be the woman that you want your daughters to grow up to be. And I was
Yeah.
just like, man, I love that. Right now, they're so young and like this clean slate of they could be whatever they want to be. And everything that I want for them, I could best give them by being an example of that right now. I loved that quote. It's been my like daily mantra since it's been just the kids and I, because I'm the only example that those two girls have, the only family we have here and everything. And that just that one really resonated with me. I like
I
that.
love it. Being radically yourself and radically happy, I think is such a role model thing to do. Because again, personally, and I know you know a lot of people in your life too, but a lot of people go through life, they're victims, they're always complaining. And there's a ton of shit for all of it. Life happens to all of us. There's so much to complain about, but you get to decide every day. And I think just making the choice to pursue a dream, not knowing how it's going to turn out for you, your advocacy group, doing what's right in your heart, being happy, pursuing your passions. That is such a great example to your children. Because unfortunately, so many people don't even get out of and some, mentally, and we've talked about that, can't do it without help or aren't ready to take that step. But oh my God, just doing that for your kids is such a huge example to just live your happiest life.
Yep. And then just to tie that back in with resentments, that's exactly why it's so important to work on letting go of whatever is holding you back from choosing to be happy every day. Um, gotta let go of whatever it is that is holding you back from being able to live your best life.
And like you said, and it's, look, I know you feel it too, but there are some days right now, I feel like I'm in a good place where I'm like, okay, I'm balancing it. But there have been years, I've gone years feeling down, like I don't balance it, embarrassed about things, or, jealous of other people. So you ebb and flow. But I think where you always, I love that you say this almost every podcast episode, it's just one day at a time and like things will get better. This is temporary. And that, if you can keep that in mind, it's so true. And then you'll be back on top. I mean, life is just peaks and valleys.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like about journaling, or having some sort of record of when you were feeling great, not just journaling when things are awful. Because like today, it's been rainy and gray here. I've got these people trying to get poop out of the basement, and I just feel, the kids, I've ordered takeout the last 2 nights. I just feel like I'm not killing it right now. And when I was doing my meditation this morning, one of the things I prayed was, help me to remember the sunny days and the days where I felt like I am kicking it, I am happy, I feel fulfilled, because you're not going to feel that every day. But trying to look back and remember those moments, for me at least, helps me to realize they're going to come again. Maybe it's a
Yeah,
crappy few days, maybe it's a crappy few months. I've had crappy years, but they will come again. And chances
me
are
too.
they'll be even better. If you're doing the hard work, they'll be even better than the good
The
days
highs
in
will
the
be
past.
so much higher. Yes, I agree. And the lows, I think, get a little bit easier because the more practice you have, the more you can kind of see when they're coming and, get out of old patterns.
Yeah, and the more
Um,
healed you'll be to be able to handle it again. So much strength, all of my strength has come from pain and those worst rock bottom moments. So,
oh, okay, this might be my favorite episode yet. This is
yeah,
so good.
it is so good. So good.
Yeah, because I've been everything we talked about, I've been there, and I was just thinking, God, I could have used this podcast episode so much during those post, especially the post 2 years off Kane show. And I'm like, God, somebody's going through where we were, and they're going to tune into this, and hopefully it's going to bring them a little joy.
You don't know how many times I hear myself talk, like I'll go back and listen to these, and I'm like, are you even the same person that you were 5 years ago? Like, who is this imposter? Because if only I had heard myself now back then, it would have
Yeah.
made a massive difference. So hopefully, our mission is continued, that we're sharing all this in the hopes that it helps somebody else in the place that we were both at 2, 5, 10 years ago. Maybe it'll help them today.
Natasha, where can people follow you, reach out? And of course, all the videos are going to be going on your YouTube, Ms.
Yeah.
Pink Monster. I know that's that's like a whole other day. You have to work on that, but
Well, it's not, I mean, Google, like, I don't even, Google is my other thorn. They're not letting me get into my old YouTube account to be able to post stuff, but I will figure it out. And if nothing else, then I guess I could just post them on Instagram. But yeah,
yes,
so we'll keep
yes.
releasing the podcast. You'll release the audio, people can go listen. And then the next day I'll post the video if you want the amazing eye candy of the two of us. Because
People
why would you
do.
not?
They're in my inbox all the time. Where can I watch? Where can I watch? I'm like, it's coming, it's coming. Okay, so at Ms.
So,
Pink Monster on Instagram.
yep, MS Pink Monster Instagram.
Perfect.
That's where you can find my base camp, and then all the other links will come from there.
At the Sarah Fraser Show, and we're going to release the audio every single Monday on Sarah Fraser Show. All right, Natasha, we'll see you next
And
week.
just please share this with somebody that you think needs it. That's the
One,
last thing I was going to say, and then I'm not going to talk anymore. But share it with somebody else. Spread the love.
love you, girl. We'll talk
I
to you
love you
soon.
too. Bye.
Bye.